Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham.
Did you just take a shit? You looked like you took a shit, dude.
Ty, you know what? Like, I don't have a lot of time these days. I got to do it all in on the podcast. You know, we're sharing our lives with millions of people. And by millions, I mean 75, 85.
Yeah.
Maybe 100. We've moved up from the 1 through 10. Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, the long-haired fella with what color is that shirt? Like I saw off green. Anyway.
Kind of bluish.
It looks good. I like it. It brings out your eyes. It makes it pop.
Thank you.
With the Samson hair and the backwards hat. Today was backward hat day. Is Ty Franck, my dear friend Ty Franck, and we have a very special episode today. Very special episode. And we teased it a little bit last episode. But Ty, who's our very special guest today?
Well, and not just special, but so special we had to do it twice.
We had to do it twice. And here's the thing. All you millions of people out there watching right now, you probably think that Ty and I don't make mistakes and that we're perfect. And I'm just going to tell you, you're right. It was our producers. It was Joseph it was all Joseph that completely throwing him under the bus. I'm just kidding. No, so for whatever reason, we had technical difficulties. We had this very special guest on earlier. We had the most amazing conversation. We're going to try to match it today, but we completely lost the recording. And so now, graciously, we are doing this again, and she has agreed to come on and be with us.
I would guess that the next time she hires us to work on something for her, we're going to get paid about half as much because of this.
Yeah.
So we just lowered our value in the marketplace, but she did agree to come back.
Just as long as she hires me again. That's all I care about.
This is our boss from the beginning of The Expanse, Season 1, the president of Alcon Television who bought the show, Sharon Hall.
And the MVP of the Expanse history. If you're an Expanse fan, you should, if you see Sharon Hall walking down the street, you pull her aside and give her, first explain to her.
Please do not pull her aside.
No. Pull her aside.
Please do not do that.
Ty, listen to me. You pull her aside, but you explain to her you're an Expanse fan, and then you mean no harm, and you give her a hug. Sharon Hall!
Hi.
Are you
By the way,
are you okay with Wes telling everybody to hug you? Are you cool with that? Or?
No,
Yeah.
you know that I've been kind of like a germphobe, borderline Howie Mandel for years, and so this pandemic is like my Olympics because everyone's wiping everything down and everybody's masked, and it's
so
awesome.
you might get sprayed with mace, but give her a hug.
Yeah,
she gets the best hugs.
No,
I'm kidding.
You know what? Those Expanse fans, they're out there. I'll tell you a quick story that wasn't in our first podcast, the fresh one when I was funny. This one's going to start in like a dark place. So I was in the ER with a friend.
What?
A friend was having like a cardiac event. He's fine, but I ran him to the ER and I was wearing my Rocinante sweatshirt from season 1. And the nurse saw the sweatshirt and she was like, "Oh my God, where'd you get that?" And I was like, I worked on the show. And she started like genuflecting and acting crazy. And I had no choice but to like unzip and give her the sweatshirt off my back.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I thought,
sweet.
She's not leaving my friend's side all night. She's going to be like a private nurse because I gave her that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You kept your friend alive.
I did.
Like, she never let anything happen to him because of that.
No question about it. So
does your friend know that you are responsible for his life?
I don't think I ever. I mean, he knew that there was some like big drama around the sweatshirt, but I think at that point he was concerned about reaching his family and telling them he was fine. So anyway, yeah. Those are the fans.
That is so sweet of you.
Yeah.
And that right there, that's
really
a great
nice.
That's a great story to start out to see how generous Sharon Hall is. And you have to be generous and have that kind of mindset to be able to be the kind of producer that she is.
That's very sweet of you. That's not going to work.
You know,
Yeah, well, let's tell everybody, because probably not a lot of people know what it means to be the president of a television studio. So the reason Sharon is connected to the show is when Daniel and I and Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby were going around LA pitching the show, the idea of the show to various studios, Sharon was the head of Alcon Television at the time. She was the one who heard our pitch. that we pitched the show to her, the idea of the show. You read the script too, right, Sharon? That pilot script that Mark and Hawk did?
I did read the script, yes. But I had your agent, Howard, had sent ahead the first 2 books, I believe, and some kind of, the manifesto came later, but there was like a letter from you guys with your vision. I don't even know if you authored it, but somebody sent a letter with your vision attached to that. And then we got the script. And then I remember the airless, windowless room that we met on Santa Monica Boulevard, where we had that pitch. There was a lot of dudes around a table and me. It was great.
That was you and Ben, right? Ben Roberts?
Ben Roberts, who is now the head of Alcon Television, was but a mere development executive at the time, because this is going back a long time ago. And it was an amazing pitch. The books are, beyond compare. Mark and Hawk are 2 people that I was dying to be in business with. I'd actually been stalking them for a couple of years to try to work with them. So I was very primed to love this. And it was a high bar of difficulty, but I was up for it. And just a note about when you say head of a studio, Alcon was a brand new television studio when you came.
Yeah.
I mean, we had done, I think, a pilot on Amazon, and we were in the middle of producing the Sinatra documentary for HBO. And we were looking for our first kind of like big tentpole series, something to plant our flag and establish us in the town. And you guys darkened our doorway. And, if you had not messed up the first recording of this podcast, I would say at this point, and I was so happy that I won the beauty contest, because CAA, the agency who represented Sean Daniel Company and Mark and Hawk, among other people, really made me feel like we stood a chance of losing this, that it was so competitive and all the other studios in town were bidding on it. And what did I learn last week after all this time? What did you tell me?
What did you learn?
I learned that there were no other bidders for the project.
That's actually not true.
I was totally played. I think I outbid myself, because they probably put a number down on the table and said, "You need to beat this." And I was the only person bidding.
No, that's actually not true. We actually had I don't remember saying that, because we had a number of people make us offers for it, but nobody made an offer that was as attractive as the one that you guys made.
That's different. That's slightly different from what you told me the first time we did the podcast.
I'm not remembering what I said, but maybe I misspoke. But we had asked about it, but it became very clear that what they wanted to do was just buy it and sit on it. Wanted it, but wanted us to change the show so that it became Holden and Miller Solve Crimes on Series. They wanted CSI Space. And then who was the other one that there was wanted it. And the only reason was taken off the table very quickly is because they made what my agent told me was a very attractive offer to Mark and Hawk and an incredibly insulting offer to Daniel and I.
Yes.
So the offer that we got, it was clear that you guys wanted to actually make it.
Oh, we had to make it. We had to make it.
Yeah.
And, when we went around town, Wes, so what happened is we kind of got the pitch in order. It was a really, really amazing pitch, too. And it wasn't long.
Who led the pitch in the room?
It was Mark Hawk, Sean Daniel, Jason Brown, Ben Roberts, myself, the guys. Maybe Ben Cook was there, too. I don't remember. You have to ask him.
Ben Cook didn't come around for the pitches.
He didn't go to the pitches.
But who led the pitch? Who was
Mark Fergus is the one who did the pitch.
Yeah. It was a Mark and Hawk joint. And we went around to, probably 5 or 6 places to pitch it. And we did have a competitive bidding situation with the networks once we took it out. We had Sci-Fi Channel, HBO came back, and they just wanted to look at it as a pilot. And a network that is no longer in existence, the Microsoft network.
That's right.
Came in really strong. They loved it. They were really, really interested in it. And I don't know if you remember this, but we went to, I think it was like either a taco place on Venice, in Venice, like on Abbot Kinney afterwards to talk about the pitches. Do you remember that? It was, we were done with all of the meetings, and everybody was kind of leaning in toward the Microsoft network because they had a lot of money and it sounded cool to be with Microsoft. And then we all kind of looked at each other and we said, well, this really is a sci-fi television show, and we'd be idiots not to go to the place that guaranteed to put it on the air as a series. The other ones were not there yet.
Yeah.
We went straight to series off of the script for it with a brand new studio. with Mark and Hawk, who've never done television before. And these books, which at the time, even though they had a strong fan base, they were nothing like they are today. And so I think it was just, testament to what was on the page and your vision for where you were going to take the overall story, that it kind of gave the sense to the Sci-Fi Network that we knew what we were doing, but we learned it.
Yeah. Well, so Daniel and I did not go on the network pitches. We were only there for the studio.
Because you intimidate people. Because you're scary.
I'm not scary. What are you talking about?
You were. I think I knew you for like 6 months before I saw you smile.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, whoa. You've seen Ty smile?
Oh, yeah. I've seen Ty smile.
Well, which is odd because Daniel and I both liked you immediately. Like we came out of that pitch to you guys, and we would always hang back and go, "Well, how do you think that went?" And the comment both of us had is like, "I don't know how it went, but I really liked that lady. She was cool." So we both immediately liked you.
Oh my God, that lady makes me sound like like the librarian in the room, but that's okay. Yeah, no, it was. But also, Ty, you were strange because you were telling me things about like having visions about us together.
No, I told you that later after we had already made the show. I didn't tell you that until we were sitting in the Lucky Bar in Toronto.
Okay, well, why don't we tell the people who are listening what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this is I'm a pretty strict materialist and naturalist. I don't believe in the supernatural or any of that woo stuff. But I have one counter argument to all of my skepticism, and that is that I had a psychic vision the first time I met Sharon when we were sitting in that little windowless, airless room pitching to you guys. And I think we had all been introduced, but what your name was the limit of what I knew about you at that point, right? We're sitting there doing the pitch, and as you do, your eyes go around the table, you're looking at everybody, and for a brief moment, you and I looked at each other just for a second, nothing weird, just for a second, our eyes passed. And I had this weird moment where I pictured very vividly the two of us sitting in a dark restaurant or bar, having a drink and talking about the show. Like, nothing weird, nothing romantic, just two people sitting in a bar going, "So how do you think the show went?" Right? Like that. And I don't know where that idea came from. I don't know where that vision came from. It just popped into my head. Then when we went downstairs and we were, Daniel and I were chatting, we were talking about you. I was like, "Oh, that lady seemed cool." And Daniel was like, yeah, I liked her. And I said, I had the weirdest moment. And I told him about the moment. I was like, I had this weird moment where the two of us looked at each other and I pictured us in a bar talking about the show. And he goes, "Well, from, your mouth to God's ears." Like 2 years later, you and I were sitting in the Lucky Bar in Toronto in that dark room, having a drink, talking about the show. And that's when I brought it up. I said, what's weird is I've seen this moment.
Yeah.
That's the first. So I didn't lead with that.
No, but that's where the mace came in. After you,
yeah.
But before we go further, I think that one of the things that I think is really interesting is that you come from an industry family.
I do.
If you want to talk a little bit about your father, your sister, and then how you decided that you wanted to become a storyteller yourself.
I think it's just genetically coded in my family's history. I mean, my grandmother, my father's mother, at 21 was writing, directing, and starring in Yiddish theater in Canada. So I think I come from a long line of gypsies and storytellers. Sorry for all the bells in the background here. I come from a long line of storytellers. And my dad was Monty Hall of Let's Make a Deal fame. And he was a producer and an incredible person, just an amazing humanitarian.
Was that an LA production?
Yeah.
So you were living in LA at that point?
I was living in LA. I was in Beverly Hills, and my dad was, on TV along with my neighbor's dad and the dad up the street and the mom on the corner. And so it was pretty normal for me. It was kind of like, company town. And, later in life, I got to work with Sean Cassidy, who, aside from being like the face on my pillowcase when I was 12 years old, is an amazing writer. He's just an incredible showrunner. But we were reminiscing. He's a little bit older than I am. I think my brother coached him in Little League, and his little brothers and I were in the musical theater together. And my memory of Shirley Jones was not so much the mom on the Partridge Family, but the woman who bought my pathetic mother's cake at the bake sale to benefit the elementary school. I mean, it was kind of like Mayberry with a little bit of money when I was growing up. But
Right.
yeah, so grew up in LA with in my family, and my sister Joanna Gleason is an actress. She's a Tony Award winning actress and has been on a number of TV shows, and she's my muse and my pace setter. And so, I grew up idolizing her, and so it's kind of natural that I followed in the footsteps. My brother's a documentary filmmaker. My mother was a producer who won Emmys for her miniseries that she produced. So I'm kind of like the Fredo of the Hall family, if you can believe it.
What?
What?
What are you talking about? You have made some of the most successful TV shows of all time.
Yeah.
How can you be Fredo?
Because they got something extra. The other members of the family. I kind of got like the dregs of the gene pool. By the time I'm much younger than everyone in the family, and so I always felt that way. Because
did you have a moment growing up where you're like, I'm going to rebel. I'm not going to be in the film industry. I'm not going to be in Hollywood.
Absolutely. I went to college, full on thinking that I was going to be a diplomat, and I was going to join the Foreign Service and be a cultural attaché and, marry a spy and live a life of mystery. And instead I married a writer.
That does sound pretty cool.
It is.
It does sound cool. And in some ways you are a diplomat. I mean, the way that you have to, the way that when you're running shows and controlling the studio's expectations and going back and forth. I mean, you're a peacemaker in a lot of ways.
I was just about to say the same thing because, people obviously don't work in the industry like I didn't 7 years ago. But if you come from outside, you don't understand what these roles are. And your role as the president of Alcon TV really was, you were between two competing forces that didn't want the same thing. You have the money guys on the Alcon side who are paying for everything, right? And you have the executives at Sci-Fi who want to put something on the air and sell as many ads as possible. And the only overlap point is these guys want to make a show and these guys want to use the show to sell ads. That's the only overlap in their interests. And you had to navigate between these two intractable groups that have strong positions on what they want that don't align 90% of the time. And you have to kind of tiptoe through that little 10% crack and somehow get that show made and on the air at the same time.
And if you hit
that is your job.
Yeah. If you hit that 10% lane, it's kind of golden. There's a symbiotic relationship because if, willing buyer, willing seller, as Jerry Longarza, who was head of our business affairs at Alcon, used to say, if it lines up that we're making such an incredible singular show that is network defining, brand defining, because Sci-Fi kept trying to relaunch itself. I don't know if you remember that. They were looking for something that was going to kind of give them a premium, feel. The kind of programming that they were looking for was bigger and better and way more ambitious than the stuff that they had done in the past. And we had executives there, Bill McGoldrick, for one, who was as committed as he could be with his kind of tension of being the licensing network and having to sell ads and make everybody happy and look at ratings. All of that, was hard for him because he really, really wanted our creative vision to be realized. So, if you can get it to a place where they're willing to spend a little extra and be a little bit patient about the ratings and maybe see it beyond the ratings so that it has value beyond the traditional metrics that you judge a show, it can be a great relationship. But you're right, it doesn't always line up that way. And what happens, unfortunately, because of marketing or because basic cable was dying or any reason that you can come up with, the show, although it had good ratings, it wasn't enough to redefine the Sci-Fi network. And they were paying a lot for it. So going back to the beginning days, the fact that they stepped up with a direct-to-series order with a brand new studio and new people to the table is extraordinary. I think it was helped by bringing Narain Shankar onto the project because he's a bona fide, incredible showrunner. And I think that gave them a sense of confidence in our ability to execute. So that decision alone, I like taking credit for because he's a good friend of mine and I'd worked with him in the past. I think really, really went a long way with the Sci-Fi network in the beginning.
I didn't ask this last time, but where did you and Narain first work together?
Noreen and I worked together on a pilot with Ron Moore. We were reimagining Wild Wild West at CBS.
Oh, right.
And I would love to read that script again. Actually, I'm going to ask him. I'm sure he has it. But it was really ambitious. And now, if you look at what CBS is known for, it never would have run on CBS. It would have been something closer to, I wouldn't say Westworld because it's a different story, but that feeling of just the bravery of storytelling. And Ron Moore and Noreen are old friends. They went to college together. They've known each other forever. So they were my partners on that pilot when I ran drama at Sony.
To bring a little insight to the people listening of what you do, I had a long talk with Noreen. Noreen is a brilliant guy, and we always have long talks about the industry. I always pick his brain about what he does. And I asked him, I said, what do you look for in a producer that you work with, and who is some of the best producers you ever work with? And he said Sharon Hall. And he said one of the things that Sharon Hall has above and beyond other producers that he's worked with is she has a really great sense of story. She knows how to tell a story. And Sharon was a writer and still is. And so your understanding of story, but then also your ability to fight for creatively what the overall vision is. If some of the execs at the studios aren't on board or fully understand, your ability to communicate to them what you're getting. I mean, that was so important for the early years of The Expanse, because The Expanse is it's not an easy vision to put out there. I mean, you have to have it's complex in a lot of ways. You have to have somebody that's standing up for you, that understands The Expanse and knows how to communicate it and fight for it and stand up for it in the studios. That is the most valuable thing of how The Expanse became what it was.
Wow, I thank you. I think that
that was Noreen's. Yeah,
it's really nice of him to say that. And I'll say two things to put a finer point on that. Really great executives at the studio level, or even executive producers or producers on a feature film, I would say a giant chunk of the job is block and tackle. I mean, it's just protect the storyteller, protect the integrity of the story. And that's not just about the words on the page, which is the part I love, is the words on the page, because I like working with the writers probably most of all, and the editors, because that's kind of writing in post too. You get another shot at it once you're cutting an episode together, and it's incredible what you can find in the edit bay in terms of rewriting certain aspects of the scene. But when you're protecting the storyteller, you are jumping in front to try to be the forward-facing person to talk to the network and all the people who want things from you. But it's also to say, we're not going to take every one of your notes. We hear you. We understand the spirit of everything that you're saying. I mean, I love getting notes from people because it definitely most often shines a light on things that are either confusing or we're not giving them enough information, that they're not getting the essence of the character from what's on the page. So I feel like notes are not scary. I love translating them because I've sat on every side of the process. I kind of know what they mean when you get a shitty note. So it's fun to kind of translate and see where you're right about diplomacy, like how much of a creative negotiation it can be too. I lecture sometimes at the film and television departments at some of the universities around here. And everybody's saying, how do you break in, and how do you know, and how do you get to be you? And I want to do what you do. How did you chart that course? And I always say, it's kind of a sum total of everything you've ever done goes into producing. So, I was in the Groundlings when I was a kid in New York. That was an amazing experience and the perfect training for anything you ever want to do in your life, because it teaches you how to be like, a high-end bullshit artist. And that's, you need a giant serving of that when you're in this business. But it also teaches you to be playful and to listen to everybody, because you can't have great improv and great storytelling if you're not listening to what everybody else is serving up. So, I mean, that's true in the writer's room, right, Ty? I mean, the writer's room can be a very chaotic place to work. There's ideas, there's somebody at a whiteboard or somebody taking it all down, the writer's assistant. And ideas are coming fast and furious, and there is a fair amount of improvisation, especially when you're dealing with underlying IP, like the Expanse books, right? The whole canon. We've had to, throw things up in the air, combine characters, move things around. I mean, it was fantastic to watch Ty and Daniel not be precious about changes to the canon that were, I think, just, very, very impactful when we were trying to develop this.
And early on, I mean, we talked about this last time. So I feel like I'm repeating myself, but the people listening haven't heard this before.
Last time doesn't exist for the
Last
listeners.
time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
One of the things you and I talked about last time was the fact that one of the early notes you had was you wanted to include an Avasarala storyline in the first season because she's not in the first book, which was a really good note. I mean, one of the things we don't have in the first book is a view of what these events are causing on Earth, what the reaction to these events are on Earth. We don't have any viewpoint for that. So we have characters watching news reports and that sort of thing in the book. So you kind of get an idea, but we don't see it from anybody's particular point of view. And by bringing Avasarala forward and giving her a storyline in the first season, we had that viewpoint. We understood why Earth is reacting the way it is to the events that are transpiring. And launching her early was great because Sharon is a treasure. And how can you have too much of Sharon, right? Like, let's put more of her. That was a great early note. And I brought that up last time because I think it's a perfect example of what a good producer does. So my least favorite note from a high-level producer is a line note. That just feels like a waste of everybody's time. Yeah. What I love is big picture notes. So for you, when you said, we need a viewpoint on Earth, let's bring Avasarala in. That's a big note. That's a big story note. It took a lot of work to fix that and to make that happen. But the end result was this really interesting thing. It wasn't like, well, you used this word in line 4 and I preferred this word. Those kind of notes fucking drive me nuts. But that's what a good producer does. A good producer stays out of the minutia, I think. A high-level producer, they stay out of the minutia. That stuff will come out in the wash. The showrunner will take care of that.
Believe me, the actors will approach you if a line doesn't.
The actors will say, I hate this word. Can I use another word? Yeah, for sure. That'll all come out in the wash. But what come out in the wash is a big structural problem. You can't fix big structural problems.
And that one specifically, I mean, it was like, I don't think I realized when I gave the note how important it was going to be to season 1 because, where are we in the future? I think just seeing the UN, seeing New York, the seawall, which, by the way, was like pie in the sky when we were talking about it, and now it's being built 8 years later, right? But just seeing that we're still here on Earth, if you don't know the books, we're alive, we're still on Earth. We've transcended nation-state tribalism, but now we're in planetary tribalism and solar system tribalism, right? And we are in, I won't call it a post-racial world, but the race doesn't really come into play in your canon. Economic standing and sovereignty of like self-determination is more the thing that we're talking about. Yeah. All of those things, we've taken our problems with us into the future. We've come all this way out here, and why didn't we bring a little light, like what's said in the pilot? But just having, first of all, a female head of state, of planet, was really important to me. Having an older woman is really important to me because they're not disposable. And it also gave us an opportunity to land, to understand where we are as people. And so when you see that, and then you see Belter, and you kind of understand how hard it is to just have an ice trawler in space, I think it just really contextualized the entire world. So I'm not saying it was a genius. So I didn't know that when we gave it. I was just like, we need another point of view. I want another woman. We should bring Earth into it. But seeing it actualized, I think was a really good idea. So I'm glad we came up with it.
One thing I don't know is how did you guys start to have the conversation with Sheree? How did she become involved with the Expanse?
Well, she was already friendly with Mark and Hawk. They knew her, and I can't remember.
Oh, they worked together before, or?
Right? Ty,
yeah, they were. I don't remember how they knew each other, but they did.
They did, and her name was on a list. And we all were like, "Are you kidding? Would she really? She do TV? She would live in Toronto? Like, it just seemed like pie in the sky, and that we might as well take a flyer on her because she's never going to say yes, kind of a thing." And then she did.
Yeah,
which was amazing.
It really wasn't, and which brings up actually another point that Sharon really, I mean, because as you mentioned, part of your job is to protect us, to sort of, like you said, throw some blocks for us. And when Daniel and I first started talking to Mark and Hawk and later Narain about what the show should look like, it was really important to us that the show be at least as gender and ethnicity diverse as the books are. We never wanted to write books that were like white men in space. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't want the show to look like that. And that was really important to us. So when we were talking about casting, and this is specific to Vossarala's part, a lot of names got thrown at us that were like the standard white blonde lady. And we kept saying to Narain that she's not right. Let's get some ethnic diversity into that part. In the books, the character is from India, but it doesn't have to be. She doesn't have to be from India. But let's get somebody who's, feels like from someplace else in the world other than America. And it would have been so easy for the studio to not back us on that, but you always did. You always had our backs on that. And so, they brought up another actress who's an amazing actress who, of course, everybody would love to work with for Vossarala, but is a white American lady. And then they brought up Shorey, and Daniel and I were both like, Shorey is right. That's who we picture when we picture Vossarala. And you absolutely had our backs on that. And I think a lot of people would have gone with the other actor just because that person was more famous. They were a bigger name. And I don't want to say their name, but it was definitely somebody who has more, at that point, much more fame. And you always had our backs on that stuff. You were like, no, they're right. Let's get Shorey.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was a challenge also when you're casting a show and there's a network, especially at the time, a basic cable network who really wanted and I'm not. This is no diss against the way they cast things because they've put really great cast together, including Meghan Markle. But they had a list of names that were very poppy and kind of, we call them inside the office, the Us Weekly names. They're just like us and they're really pretty and they're already kind of famous. And, we put actors, I think, in this with the exception of Thomas and Shorey, if you saw her films. Everybody was ascending in their career or unknown. So, Stephen Strait and Wes had worked before. People knew who they were. And that was exciting. Thomas Jane, obviously really exciting. But when it came time to round out the cast, finding people, like Frankie and Dominique and, and Kara, I really was excited. And this always happens in hindsight about making stars, even in Breaking Bad, which I worked on. Bryan Cranston, although he was the dad from Malcolm in the Middle, he wasn't a household name when we cast him.
Yeah.
And certainly Aaron Paul was not at all. I mean, he had been on Big Love, but I don't think anybody knew his name. And it was so thrilling to watch them become stars because they really inhabited the roles and it was so believable. And I think the same thing is true of The Expanse, just watching the journey, watching the actors from the beginning to kind of where we left off. It's exciting to see everybody kind of ascend at the same time.
I will say that The Expanse has been one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever been a part of. And I love everybody that's a part of it. And it's just been such a highlight. I mean, obviously we're doing this. It's just been such a blessing in my life. And I know, and all the people listening to the show know that we don't have Ty to thank for that, because if Ty would have had his choice, I would not have been the guy. But I definitely have Sharon to thank for that. And I know that you were a major part of me being a part of The Expanse, and I'm so thankful. And you really gave me that opportunity. And luckily, a few years back, I was working with this young hotshot writer, handsome, studly Todd Kessler on the unit. And that's how I...
yeah, and I think you know this. He was the one who pushed you. You know what I mean?
I knew it in our last podcast that got lost. I knew that then. I didn't know. I thought it was you pushing for me. I didn't know that he was pushing through there. So
he was
so
the
that's
one
incredible.
Who saw your name and was like, you know who that is. And then he reminded me that you played in the unit. And you have him to thank for you being in The Expanse, because I wish it was my idea from the beginning, but it was not. It was Todd Kessler's.
Well, call Todd up and I'll give him a little kiss right now because
he's brining something over there. I don't know. Something's happening.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Thanksgiving's tomorrow.
Yeah.
That brings up the fact that Sharon's husband, Todd, is a writer who has written on some of my absolute favorite shows ever. Whenever he's around, I get a little starstruck because I just want to talk to him about the shows that he's worked on that I love, and I don't want to be that guy, so I just get really quiet.
My God, he would love you to be that guy, I'm sure.
But talk about a guy that knows story. I love talking, like getting in long, deep conversations with Todd. You remember that time we went to dinner, Sharon, in L.A., and like he was telling me about this scripts he was working on and, he's just a really smart guy.
He is a smart guy, and he's really branched out too. I mean, he was a television writer for many years, and now he's writing some features and is even part of a scripted podcast that they're launching. That's really cool. So yeah, we're back to radio, I guess is the way to put it. But yeah, it's
pretty much
it's great.
Radio's the future.
From time to time, he's a really thoughtful writer. Aside from being my husband, who I can boss around, he actually has his own ideas, and I'm wise enough to listen to him when he does.
Well, if he ever wants to hire me to work on his show, just let me know, because I would happily sit in a room with him and ask him questions about his shows.
Yeah, he's great in the room. But the writers you guys put together on this staff are equally as impressive and have all gone on to have their own shows and run things. And it's been a really cool graduating class on The Expanse. Even our DP too. I mean, when we met Jeremy, this was another chance that the network let us take. Jeremy had never done a network show before, never done a series. I don't think he had done a series before. Maybe in Canada he had done a series, but
no, he's never done a series.
Never done a series. So, wow. And I remember having a discussion with the network where they were like, we don't know who this is. And I said, well, you got to watch his film. You have to watch this stuff. More importantly, if you want to, you should talk to him because he has an incredible point of view on how to shoot the show. And look what he was able to do.
Oh my God. I mean,
it's brilliant.
Speaking of that, are you the one that hired Terry?
I'm the one who hired Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, because Terry was also a big champion of Jeremy. So, yeah, the pilot director you hired was a huge champion of Jeremy. And I know he pushed really hard to get Jeremy as his DP. So,
yeah. I don't know if you guys remember, we were down the road with Jean Sarah to do the pilot. Do you remember that? Ty, do you remember?
I don't. I wasn't a part of it at the time. Do you remember that time?
No, I don't remember that.
We were out to all sorts of people with this pilot.
Yeah.
People read it and freaked out for it. And, from James Wan to Jean Sarah, a bunch of feature film people. And the problem was their schedules. No one had the time to, go up there. And it was a very long prep because we were world building. I mean, we had weeks and weeks of building. And we had to not just shoot a pilot, but with Seth Reed, our production designer, and VFX, which, mushroomed to, I don't know how many different VFX houses you guys wound up using, but we had somebody for the ships and somebody for the screens and somebody for the green screen and somebody for, the director that we hired had to go up early enough to help us design the world and how we were going to shoot it, down to the kind of gimbal we were going to put on the camera and which camera we were going to use. And there's just a million decisions that had to be made. What do the helmets look like? How do we not block their face? What do the screens look like? Is Miller's cracked? Does that happen in the future that you can crack your screen? I mean, everything was a decision, right? In the beginning. Yeah. And so, we couldn't find somebody who was just going to kind of like duck in to do an episode and leave. We needed somebody who was really going to author that. And so the feature film guys, as much as we love them and women, they couldn't do it in their schedules. And we were really lucky to find Terry. And had him, he dropped everything in the UK and came over and, lived there for a couple months.
Yeah, because I spent several months with Terry up in Toronto. He was involved in everything. I know some feature guys have done very well on TV, but all of my friends who are old TV veterans say feature guys are hit and miss. That, you bring feature people in to shoot pilots and you think it's a great idea. And the schedule is hard for them. The pace of TV is very hard for people who've worked exclusively in features, and sometimes it doesn't work. You look at amazing feature directors like James Cameron, has done very, you look at his pilot work and it's pretty.
Dark Angel.
Dark Angel was not a great pilot. It wasn't.
It was a great series.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
there are more than a few, and I'm not going to name them, shows that are on the air today that were reshot by TV people after the feature people left.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. I hadn't heard about that.
But it's interesting you brought up all the decisions you guys had to make in the very beginning. And one thing that people might find interesting is even particularly, you talked about the helmet a little bit, but I feel like we're just now, season 7, 8, 9 years in, really starting to figure out the helmets, because the challenge is you got to have air coming in through the helmets because it's connected to the suit. So that's always an audio issue. And then you have visors of the suit. So that's always it's always reflecting light and being able to shoot in the eyes. So we're always adjusting, going back, but we finally figured it out, guys, on the last season.
I think the original helmet, I could be wrong. We have to go back and ask. I don't know if that was Joanne or what division that was, but it came from motocross. we were stumped on how to do this. We knew we needed helmets in space. And
I know the boots did.
Yeah, it was, we could have used some more time developing what we were doing about helmets. And then we were married to it.
Well, that was Prop Jim did all the helmets. And he was fighting this constant tug of war with budget because there were better options that were like 4 times the price. And so it was this constant battle between him and the production manager of, okay, it's better, but is it 4 times better?
Right.
Because it's 4 times as much.
And then I don't know, the word supply chain gets thrown around a lot these days. But back then, we had a supply chain problem with a bunch of the elements that I don't know if you remember that, Ty, but we ordered a bunch of these things from, I think some of them were actually coming from Korea. But we were nervous because, here comes, day 1 of shooting. And although we weren't in the Rossi for the first day of shooting, it was coming upon us and we didn't have the elements, and then we had to retrofit everything. And there were a couple of sweaty nights around that. Yeah,
he bought a bunch of Chinese fighter pilot helmets.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that had to be shipped from either China or Korea, where they were being stored.
Right. And
the question of, is the container with our helmets going to show up before we need to shoot those days? Yeah. And that was everybody was sweating bullets on that.
Absolutely. I just remembered that this second when we were talking about it. But there was a lot of drama around the helmets, and there was drama about Miller's hat too. For some reason, that fedora, man, that was just like that was a very provocative thing. It got people fighting.
Well,
wait, there were people that didn't want the hat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, or that specific hat. So the drama came because Terry didn't like the idea of a fedora. Terry, the pilot director, did not like the idea of a fedora, wanted to do something else. We convinced him story-wise why the hat mattered, and he got it. He got why we needed it in the story, but didn't like that look. And actually, in the book, he's not wearing a fedora. That's the wrong hat. But the mistake that was made is, I'm not going to name the person who did this, but an executive producer who was around a lot in the first season, went to Thomas and said, why don't you pick out whichever hat you want? That's a huge mistake. Do not do that. Actors are not thinking of the overall design of the show when they pick things for themselves. So, of course, Thomas went in the truck that had the hats and grabbed that fedora and said, "Oh, I like this one." It didn't really fit with anything else we were trying to do. It didn't really match any of the other design elements. But once you've told an actor that, you can't take it back.
Yeah. And
right? Then go to them and go, your hat sucks.
I always thought that was a throwback to the noir element of his story.
I think that's why Thomas was attracted to it. But what we got back from some of the network people and from some of the studio people was like, why did Humphrey Bogart show up, in the future? What are we doing with Sam Spade in the future,
Yeah. And it's not like there's rain or sunshine out there that he has to keep off his,
keeps the sun out of my eyes. Doesn't he say something like that?
He says it keeps the rain off my head.
He doesn't even know what rain tastes like.
Right.
That's what he's asking about the whole time. So, Sharon, I'm curious, this thing, I mean, I've been involved with Expanse almost 8 years now. You have been involved much longer, and I know that you are now kind of working on the post-production of season 6, and I know that you watched a lot of season 6. Without talking about story, but how do you feel right now? Like we have come upon this last season, and you're in the process of finishing up. What is that? What do you feel?
I feel lucky is the first word that pops into my head, because I don't know how many people get to say they've been a part of 6 seasons of an incredible show. I mean, Breaking Bad, I was the studio executive, less a producer, more of the executive at the studio. And on this one, I transitioned when I left Alcon, I became an executive producer of the show. It was my parting gift when I left. And, so I feel incredibly fortunate. And I also feel, like the halo effect of having been attached to this is immeasurable, because now people know me, they've seen my name on the show for 6 seasons. And I can't tell you what it's done to attract writers to working with me, even though I can't take credit for all. I mean, I was really there to birth it in season 1. And then, as I said, I was forgotten but not gone for the future seasons. I mean, I opined, I went to the mixes, I gave Noreen notes, but I wasn't as kind of like in the weeds about every single decision like I was in season 1. After that, and the fact that I got to go along for this ride is incredible. So I have seen the entire series, and I've seen up through the final episode, and I'm really excited. I feel like this season is so satisfying from a character standpoint. I think everybody will they won't feel like, what just happened? We went to black in the middle of a Journey song, which is brilliant. I like that ending. But this is something that's a little more complete. And at the same time, leaves the door open in case anybody wants to revisit this incredible canon.
I feel so thankful as well to be a part of something like this, as collaborative is. And obviously, I've gotten really close to everybody involved. But for the people listening, there's the famous, us getting saved by Amazon and all that. But they don't, to make it to 6 seasons. And also, they don't hear the story about every season. That we were not sure, like we're fighting and everything. But to make it to 6 seasons in this day and age, with a show like this, that's very specific. And, it's one of those things, just being so lucky that we had the right people involved at the right time, and the fact that, and it's such a blessing.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, these shows are hard fought. You're not guaranteed an extra season, hardly ever anymore. It used to be that if you hit a certain rating, what are ratings now in the streaming world, you kind of knew you had a good shot of coming back. I feel like every show has to sing for its next season now, no matter where you are, even the very successful ones. I mean, you've seen plenty of shows on HBO or Netflix that only run for 1 or 2 seasons and then they're gone because there's such a churn and they have to constantly attract new viewers. And so what a show has to do to survive, the bar has just been raised, sky high. And there's no good reason to keep renewing The Expanse just from a pure business standpoint. If you just purely strip all the emotion.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle because the show is expensive. It's not as expensive as some of the shows on TV that don't look as expensive as they are. I mean, this one, it costs one thing. It looks like it costs a lot more to make. You guys put every penny on the screen. And I will say that, our directors and the special effects, VFX people, I mean, everybody brings their A game to this, and it's incredible.
With the exception of Breck Eisner.
But yeah,
everybody except Breck Eisner.
We're always fixing his shit. But there's no good business reason to renew this. And so I also want to I would like to thank Amazon, because they don't own the show. Everything's so vertical now that a lot of these streamers have their own networks, and so the business model doesn't exactly make a lot of sense for them if they're not producing it and owning it forever. Alcon owns this show. Alcon got a deal with Amazon, and when Amazon is done with their window where they can play these, all the episodes go back to Alcon, but that's a long time to wait for all the money you've invested in the show, Alcon Television, to make money off of it again. So everybody kind of had, excuse the expression, balls of steel when it came time to renew this show. You don't see a lot of that today. So, and I think it came down to, it's an excellent show with a rabid fan base. And that's it. Like, why did it keep getting renewed? I think those are the 2 reasons. Obviously, we've talked about the fans and how they saved the show to begin with. And I know you've covered that on other podcasts, but saving The Expanse was spectacular to watch.
Yeah.
So Sharon, we do this thing at the at the end of our podcast that we would love to invite you to be a part of. We do this top 5 in whatever specific category that we pick. And because in honor of having you on and being from an industry family, and then we're going to a lot of behind the scenes of The Expanse, we want to do the top 5 best movies about the movie industry.
Oh,
and we pick the official top 5. So once we choose the top 5, it enters into the realm of all consciousness, and that is the top 5. That's the right answer. So number 1, well, not number 1. This is in no particular order, but into the list. But Sunset Boulevard, Swimming with Sharks, Get Shorty, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Stuntman, Hail Caesar, The Player, Hollywood Shuffle, Singing in the Rain, Maps to the Stars, Tropic Thunder, Mulholland Drive, S.O.B., The Artist, Bowfinger, The Last Tycoon, Barton Fink, A Star is Born, which is not, I love that movie, but it's not really the movie industry, State of Maine, The Big Picture, Hollywoodland, L.A. Confidential, The Player.
Again.
Did The Player twice.
You think I'm
Well, there might be a
remembering
few really.
Oh, I thought you were going to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to vote off of this pool.
Trumbo. Well, these are like a big pool you come, and then that'll jog your memory. You probably have that. You might say, "I want to add this to the pool, whatever," and
Okay,
then we start to
one.
eliminate.
I'm going to add one to the pool. Postcards from the Edge, because I love that movie
Norm Ephron
so much.
Yeah,
I love the Carrie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds vibe that those two actors bring to it, Meryl Streep and Shirley MacLaine. And it really does a great job of showing how thankless it is to kind of be an also-ran in Hollywood. And I think they got that right. Singing in the Rain, obviously.
I have to get through. I haven't got through the pool yet, but I'm a Nora Ephron. No, and I'm a Nora Ephron fan, and so she's we'll definitely include that. Wait, Nora Ephron wrote that, right? No, that was Carrie Fisher. That was Carrie. That's right. Trumbo, Ed Wood, 8.5, The Day of the Locusts, and Living in Oblivion.
Wow.
That's a lot, but we can start talking about that. But and then what happens is we'll argue our favorites, and Postcards from the Edge. You gave a good case on how that could be in the top 5, and that's a great one. I don't know what I'm thinking about Nora Ephron, but no, this is from Carrie Fisher, right?
Yeah.
This is from a book that she wrote. Yeah.
It is. If you think my short-term working memory can remember anything you just said, congratulations.
So I think Hollywood is very self-absorbed and loves to make movies about itself.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think Hollywood finds itself fascinating.
Yeah.
I think most stories that are super inside baseball and self-referential and all that, I find them really tedious to get through. But there's some stuff on your list that's fucking great. Tropic Thunder.
It's great.
One of the greatest comedies of all time.
Great.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You know, I think the hardest I've ever laughed in a theater in any one scene of all time is when they were trying to drown Ben Stiller, when they were dunking him in the water.
And he's yelling,
and
cut.
He's going, cut! And they're just drowning. They keep doing the he still thinks he's in a movie, and they're trying to kill him. They're torturing him. That was hilarious. I'm in agreement. Were you a fan of Tropic Thunder, Sharon?
I love Tropic Thunder. I have 2 boys in the house. It's on repeat all the time. It's a fan favorite here in Hall Kessler land. Yeah.
And what you were just talking about, Ty, one of the movies I think that really captures what you just said about Hollywood thinking they're fascinating and self-involved is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that movie. I know it's not like some people don't think it's Tarantino's best, but I actually really enjoyed that movie a lot. And I think the things it had to say about the dream of what Hollywood is versus the reality of what Hollywood is was really interesting. There's a sequence early in the movie where the Al Pacino character, the agent, is talking to what's the actor's name that's being played by DiCaprio? Anyway, but he's talking to DiCaprio and Rick Dalton, and he lays out for him what his future is. Where right now you're playing the bad guy as a guest role in all of these series because we're burning up the reputation you built up as a leading man. we're using that now to imbue bad guys with this thing, but we're using it up. And eventually at some point, there won't be any of it left. You'll just seem like a clown and we won't have any use for you anymore. And just lays it out for him.
Yeah.
And you can see how devastating it is.
Right.
For DiCaprio, you can see on his face that he recognizes everything the guy just said is true.
Right.
And he built a reputation as a leading man. He's now burning that reputation for money. And eventually that reputation will be gone and he'll have nothing left. And it's so honest. It's so
honest. It's interesting that you say people said that it wasn't his best, wasn't one of Tarantino's best, because I think it is.
I mean, I agree. I think it's one of his best movies too, because I also felt like it wasn't style over storytelling. I felt like the characters he allowed them to land in a way that I don't think happens a lot in Tarantino movies. You know, it's very heightened usually. And we got that, but I was really kind of under the hood, especially with Leo's character in that movie.
Yeah. So I think maybe a lot of fans that watch it come to that conclusion because it's a lot of inside baseball. And it is so specific within the industry. And the honesty and how specific he is in his vision it strikes home. And when Rick Dalton's in the trailer and he's mad at himself because he's like, "You fucking alcoholic, you're fucking Rick Dalton," and he's looking at himself in the mirror and he's talking. This is so honest and so true, and it seems over the top, but it's not. And I read the novel, which is I think the novel is like a one step above, and like how great the movie is. And Tarantino is an incredible writer, obviously, but also in the novel version, he gets so much more of the interior side of the characters and what they're going through and how they're motivating. There's a scene in there where Rick Dalton is talking to Steve McQueen, and the interior dialogue as they're talking back and forth, the subtext of what they're saying, and you can hear the thoughts about status and Hollywood. And they started working as him with Steve McQueen, and started working as TV actors, and what Steve McQueen's career became and what his career became and what's underneath it. It is so brutally honest, and it's such a satire for what it really is, like status and making it and movie star and stardom and all those things. And it's brilliant. I think it's one of the great Hollywood movies.
I also think, it's been a long time since it's been out, and I think it's been a number of years since I've seen it. But I remember thinking that The Player was pretty honest about that. The Player definitely has this, because the best movies about Hollywood are the one that know that there is the outsider vision of what Hollywood is and what it actually feels like to live inside of it, and play both sides of that story. And that's what's so great about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is people meet Rick Dalton. They're like, "Hey, you're Rick Dalton. I had your lunchbox when I was a kid." But we're also inside of him, and we see the desperation that he feels as everything he built is slipping away from him, and he can't get it back, and he doesn't know what to do. You got to see both sides of it, and I think The Player does that very well, where it's like the mythology of Hollywood versus this guy's fucked up life. Mm-hmm. Tropic Thunder does that very well with it starts out with that huge action sequence, and then they cut to people complaining, but Ben Stiller can't cry on cue, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, I'm working with a child here, and when the director says, well, maybe we could try this, and then Robert Downey Jr. just drops the hands and says, "Oh, I guess we're in rewrites now," and storms off. That's the reality, right? The big flashy action sequence is the outsider view. The reality is you got a guy holding prop hands and he can't get his co-star to cry.
Right.
Here's what really strikes home for me for reality in a profound way is, the line in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when Brad Pitt says to Leonardo DiCaprio, he goes, "Remember, you're Rick fucking Dalton," and he drives away. Well, that story comes from Brad Pitt told Tarantino the story of when he was having a hard time in a bad way and career confusion and not knowing what to do. And there was a guy that was like that guy that was always with Brad Pitt. That's somebody that was always, just like a friend that was a professional friend that was always with him at all these things. He didn't really do anything, but he was a professional friend. And he was pumping Brad Pitt up. Brad Pitt was like, I don't know about career, what I'm doing. And this is at the height of Brad Pitt. And the guy goes, "Remember, you're Brad fucking Pitt. Now, what really resonated with me was that it's like, wait a minute, Brad Pitt doubts himself? Like, he has, like, career angst? And then you think, okay, well, if Brad Pitt has career angst and everything, that's for fucking everybody. Everybody feels that way. And there's this an illusion when you're in business. It's like, if somebody's successful, you're like, God damn it, they got it all figured out and everything. But they're fucking doubting themselves too. And it's just, it's all about illusion. It's a mirage in the sand. It's mist in the wind. And
I don't know if you guys had this on the list, but Sunset Boulevard is the ultimate Hollywood movie.
Yeah, that was the first one.
That was
Wes
the first
said,
one, and you're right. That is the ultimate.
It was the first one. It is the ultimate. I just watched it again the other night, and Gloria Swanson is, oh my God, she's so good in it. They're all so good in it, and it's painful. It's painful.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Brutal. Like, it's the cautionary tale for, all of us who get a little taste, of this business, is that you can really get lost in the folds of, that moment. It's a drug in a weird way. And you always are wondering kind of, can I bring it again? You know what I'm saying? It's a very corrosive feeling, that ego, right? That because this business does run on a fair amount of it. So I think Sunset Boulevard to me is probably my top pick.
It's interesting that you say all that stuff, because one of the things I'm most grateful for with getting into TV and all that is it happened to me. I was already old when it happened. So I was very comfortable with what and who I am. And I wasn't trying to define myself by Hollywood success. Like, if I had it, it was great. If I didn't have it, say la vie, I'll go do something else. I feel like if you've spent a lot of time in this without, like, you did a bunch of things that were not about being a TV producer, right? So you had a lot of life experience. I think the people who go straight into being an actor or that kind of thing without any outside experience, it becomes incredibly hard to figure out who you are, to define yourself. Yeah. And I think we see a lot of people struggle with that. What am I if I'm not an actor? And that's the great thing about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Rick Dalton is confronting the idea that someday he won't be an actor anymore. And he doesn't know what he is when he's not that.
Yeah. Because it's like Hollywood is like at the carnival, the funhouse mirrors, You could go in Home Depot and people be big fans of The Expanse. And they're like, oh my God. And they treat you in a way. And then you go sit in a room with 18 other people to go read for something, So it's this vacillation between megalomania and deep, extreme insecurity.
Right.
And so
if you're humiliation.
and if you're a constant humiliation, so if your identity and your self-esteem is still malleable, if it's still based on this superficial stuff, you will be on a roller coaster ride where, like what Sharon said earlier, the highs of highs is like a drug. And then when you're on the lows of lows, and I remember some of the early stories when I first got to town and like was working, it's like, this is a town full of drug addicts and they're chasing this high status, and that high status is their fix. And so, people talk about when you go to a party, like a Hollywood party, they're kind of looking through you and like who's there, who's what, because they're trying to get that hit of that high status. If they can talk to somebody who they think is a higher status, it'll give them that hiss. Right. That's why I live in the middle of the woods in Georgia. Like, I
think, weird, not that there was anything good about this pandemic, but the fact that people did kind of scatter, and there was no FOMO about not being in the right place at the right time or seeing the right people or being at the right restaurant or anything like that. We find each other here on these screens. It doesn't matter where we are. We're connected by technology. But it also, for the ones who left town, we're lucky enough to be able to leave a very densely populated area during a pandemic, being out in the world with the rest of us, with the rest of the people in the world. It is the great equalizer. And I think it was good for me personally to realize that you can migrate your talent to wherever you want to be and focus more on the product and not be as consumed with, I'm not out there, who's in the pitch with me, who's not, who's this, who's that. And because it can still be a little bit high schooly when you get down to it.
Exactly.
Even after doing this for 30 years, I think I'm just about at 30 years doing this. It still feels that way, if you let yourself get caught up in it.
I remember taking a step back and really looking at it. There's a reason why I live in the middle of the woods. You know, I like to be here. But when I looked back, I took a step back and I really looked at it, and I realized all that really matters is the work. All that really matters, everything else is revolving around the center of the work. And if you can provide value to somebody's project, if you can do work that brings value to the project, then that is worthy of being hired. You can't fringe yourself into a career. There's an illusion when you get there. It's like, if I go to this party and I make this guy and become friends with this guy, that is not the reality. Is if somebody's creating something or making something, you got to be able to bring the value. Right. You got to be a part of that story that they need. Now, you could be a buddy and get like but you're not going to have anything substantial. Right. Unless you can do it.
And I keep sounding like, I'm the eminence grise here. When I tell the students that I talk to, who are looking for advice, I said, you know what, and I know everybody feels like they're so talented and the world should know who they are at 24 years old and hear what they have to say. But you know what? If you spend the first chunk of your career making everybody else look good, you will be recognized as the person who makes everybody else look good, and you're going to get more opportunities to sit at the table, and slowly but surely your voice will be the one everybody kind of their heads will swivel and they'll look to you for, problem solving or a great idea or whatever it is. And it's a very organic exercise. I don't think there's a hack or a shortcut into being a great developer of content. It takes a lot of practice. I mean, Ty and Daniel, you sat at the foot of the master for a very long time before you were doing it yourself. I'm sure you've had George and you talk about that part of your life, but there was a kind of an earned place at the table. And I know that sounds so like old fashioned and anti Gen Z or whatever it is. It's really not, because I think all young people have a kind of, if I'm not this by the time I'm that, then I'm not going to this. I hear my kids say it and their friends say it all the time, but it's kind of just, relax into the work. Relax into the experience, because when you have experience, then you have confidence. Bravado is one thing, but confidence is another. And there's a difference. And I hate to sound like I'm a fortune cookie right now, but I really do feel that after 30 years that my confidence comes from having done it. And it's the kind of confidence you want your airline pilot to have. You know what I mean?
And done some shit that isn't that.
Right.
Because, when I talk to people who want to be novelists, people go, I want to be a novelist. I'm like, what is your life experience? What can you draw from when you're writing? And they want to get out of high school. They want to go into an MFA program. They want to graduate with their master's degree and then just immediately start cranking out the great American novel. Like, what the great American novels are about? They're about the Dust Bowl. They're about trying to grow crops when there's no water. They're about surviving plagues. They're about like if you have never done anything, then what are you going to write about?
Right. I mean, Hemingway wrote about war and alcoholism. And broken. Not that everything has to be broken. There are plenty of,
The amount of suffering that Steinbeck, for the Grace of Rafts, the amount of what he went through to be able to create that novel, and the living with amongst these people and the years and the time that he's put into it, suffering is the only way that you could tell the truth about suffering in that novel.
Right. And if you haven't suffered yourself, then at least hopefully you have that kind of empathy that you've really gone the distance with your research and talking to people who have gone through whatever experience you're writing about. It's just substance, that kind of to back up the great idea. But, there's plenty of examples of people who just stepped in shit and got, really famous and rich when they were 25 and won awards. But, for the most part, I love nurturing new voices to the table. And there are some, oh my God, extraordinary, brilliant, writers kind of coming up through, every walk of life. I mean, people are optioning stuff off Reddit. People are optioning stuff off of Wattpad, however you can onboard these new voices. And there's so many places to get content right now. It's great. The idea generation is there. And then I hope everybody hears this. It's really wonderful to be partnered with people who've done it before, because it can free you up to just focus on your storytelling and learn about all the mechanics of running a show at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things I think and you have some experience with this directly. We won't mention any names. The last 3 or 4 years, there's been this experiment with like yanking people out who have never worked in TV before and making them a showrunner.
Yeah.
That has not gone well. I think the other half of what you're talking about is being humble enough to do your mentorship, being humble enough to do your internship, right? Daniel and I spent 6 years learning from Naren how you make a TV show and learning from him how you write a good script and letting him rewrite us and show us why he rewrote the things that he rewrote and why he needed them to be different, and taking that in, because the other thing is I see a lot happening right now is people wanting to skip those steps and just go right to the end. And you're not ready. When you get there, you're not ready. And it will quickly be apparent to everybody who's working on the thing that you weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah, and I would say to anybody who is lucky enough to ride one of those rocket ships right now, and ask for help and call upon people to back you up, because it's kind of lonely too if you don't have a great team around you. But I think we're always going to see that. It's so exciting to break new talent. It's super exciting. It's kind of, you get that hit of like, we discovered somebody or something. And, in many cases, I'm down for it. I mean, I'm watching a show right now. I don't think the showrunners maybe they're 30 and they're doing such a great job. And they may have staffed a few times before. I mean, from what I can tell off their credits on Studio System, they're not, seasoned, crafty old professionals at all. They're just really, really fresh. And I know for a fact that they are surrounded by a producing company that has been around for 40 years, and they are they're going to backstop them in a way. And so I think, the message there is, let's not have a generational divide or a kind of disposable feeling about people who've been doing it for a long time. I mean, and you can say, I know you're going to be able to back me up on this. Any writer would be lucky to have Naren Shankar there teaching them how to run a show, right?
Yep.
So
100%.
Humility and vitamin B and D.
That's a good question. We're doing our list here. Has there ever been a great movie about the writer's room?
I mean, the Front, maybe. Do you remember that? We're not allowed to talk about Woody Allen anymore, but that was something. I think he was the star of. I don't think he wrote it, and we're going to have to go to.
No. There was one. Soap Dish.
Oh, Soap Dish. I can't believe I left that out on the thing.
Yeah, Soap Dish was because you actually had the writers in there, the producers in there fighting over their ideas. Yeah. Soap Dish was.
Oh my! Another thing I forgot was Tootsie.
Oh, Tootsie.
Yeah.
Tootsie. I can't believe I forgot Tootsie.
Tootie's so good.
I love.
And on the feature side, you've got you mentioned Barton Fink, but there's also adaptation.
I love it.
Yeah, adaptation. I saw Tootsie not too long ago, and people talk about Dustin Hoffman. I mean, look, Dustin Hoffman's had iconic, most brilliant, but I still think Tootsie is in his top 3 performances of all time.
Yeah.
That is such a great movie. It is so well done. It is so funny. And I was thinking, Sharon, you brought up Postcards from the Edge, and that scene when Meryl Streep and Shirley MacLaine, they're by the piano and they're having a get together, and Meryl Streep sings, and the mother could not be outdone, and so she does this dance number and and Meryl Streep sees her and sees like, okay, she's outperforming me.
Yeah.
And it's like, because the daughter, this is Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, but the daughter is still, she's the rising star now, and she's still, and the mother's still hanging on, like getting competitive with her daughter. Like,
alcoholic who's the rising star who keeps going in and out of rehab, and the mother also has a substance problem that's never been really addressed. And they're competing. I mean, no one likes to talk about the competition, between parents and children in the business, but they're still competing. And Shirley MacLaine, as Debbie Reynolds, I guess, is holding on for dear life to her youth and her sex appeal. And they have this epic fight after the party where Meryl Streep takes her on and says, you're embarrassing yourself the way you lifted your dress for everybody. She said, I didn't lift my dress, it twirled up. So I always remember that moment. It twirled up, but it's so, oh my God, it really it cuts to the core. It's such a brilliant film.
I always think about in Tootsie when who was the directors that directed it?
That was Sidney Pollack, no?
Sidney Pollack. So Sidney Pollack and Dustin Hoffman had a scene, just
at the Russian tea room.
No, this was not at the Russian tea room. This is when he came to his office.
Oh yeah.
And he was, talking about what he wanted to do. And Sidney Pollack was like, "You're difficult to work with." And he was giving him a hard time about the Fruit of the Loom commercial. And he's like, and he goes, "You're a fucking tomato." You remember what he was saying? He goes, "That's right, I was a tomato. I shouldn't be walking around. I should have sat down." And like they were going over the thing about him being difficult to work with. But sometimes when we're like, if we're doing rehearsal and an actor's like really hammering home certain lines or certain things, I'm not saying I don't do this, but if they're doing this, I want to be like, "You're a goddamn tomato." Like, just do your job. But that's funny. Like Tootsie should be on there. So far, and we can structure this. We have Sunset Boulevard, Tropic Thunder, Once Upon a Time on Hollywood, and now we have 2 more positions to be fulfilled. And so, Sharon, in honor of you being the guest, would you say Postcards from the Edge is going to be 3?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have like one
4. Sorry,
not exactly show business, but it does address the kind of cult-like personality surrounding some creatives. And that's Boogie Nights. It's not the show business.
Oh yeah. Oh, Boogie Nights is one of my favorite movies ever.
Joanna
you know what?
Gacy is in Boogie Nights, by the way. Did you know that time?
Who does she play in Boogie Nights?
She plays Mark Wahlberg's mother.
Oh my God, she does.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, man, I had completely forgotten that.
Yeah.
Joseph.
Oh my God, your sister's in Boogie Nights. She's
Joseph.
She's a megastar to me because Boogie Nights is one of the most perfect movies.
You got to do a clip of her sister in Boogie Nights.
She scared me when I saw that. I was trembling when I saw her performance in that because I usually see that from her.
I am so starstruck by your sister right now. Boogie Nights is and by the way, thank you for bringing up Boogie Nights, and that's got to be on the list. That's 5.
I mean, obviously it's about the porn industry and not mainstream films,
but it's industry. It's in the industry.
I think it is, and I think all of the things that they're dealing with, all the struggles that they're having, are the same exact emotional things that mainstream Hollywood deals with. Having stardom and losing it, which is the Mark Wahlberg path in there. Being a has-been when you were a megastar, and how devastating that is to your ego and your personality. The people trying to break in, the way that people worship the idea of being on the inside. The Guzman, who plays the bartender, who really wants to be in a film, and the way like that feels like, he owns a successful club. He's probably a very successful businessman, but the idea of being a star is so attractive. It's, like you're talking about the drug, he wants that drug of being on the screen. Yeah. That's a fantastic movie.
And that Corvette is like, the Corvette that they have in there is representative of the young character, Mark Wahlberg character, where it's like this red hot engine that was revving, and then it gets old and beat up and forgotten, at the end. And you see the Corvette just take abuse and abuse and abuse. And it becomes forgotten.
Yeah, I kind of like I want to go to the new Beverly Theater and watch a double bill of Boogie Nights and Once Upon a Time together.
That would be a fantastic double feature.
Fantastic. Yeah,
that would be a fantastic.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of my. It's in my all times. I just love that movie so much, and Rick Dalton makes me laugh so hard, and I hope it's not because I see some of myself in him.
What's also incredible about that movie, the production design. I mean, that's the LA I grew up in. I was a little kid.
Oh wow!
And that's what Sunset Boulevard looked like, and that's what Laurel Canyon looked like, and next to where the Manson murders took place. I was a small child. That was going on in the background when I was growing up, and it was perfect. Absolutely perfect.
And apparently Musso and Frank's has not changed one bit of decorating in 60 years. Because I've had martinis in Musso and Frank's. That's exactly the same. Yeah. And I got to tell you, this is one thing I love about Tarantino. Like I'm a bit of a Tarantino fanboy, I admit it. One of the things I love about him is Rick Dalton is set up to be this fading star, and he's a tragic story, like he's trying to hang on to this thing he had that's going away. But Tarantino doesn't make him into a clown, because he has that moment when he's shooting the TV, the Lancer TV show, and he's screaming at himself in the in the mirror and calling himself an alcoholic and saying, you better get this right, or I'm going to go home and kill myself. And then he goes and does the scene with the little girl in the bar.
Oh, it's the best.
And crushes it. And the little girl says, that's the best acting I've ever seen. He's not a clown. He's actually a good actor.
He's actually talented.
He's actually talented. He's dealing with the trauma of the twilight of his career, but he's not a clown. And that's part of what I love about that movie and about Tarantino's storytelling is he doesn't make him a clown.
And the novel goes more into it, and they reference a little bit in the movie when, you know, he almost had that role in The Great Escape. But the novel's like, if he had a few different choices and if a few people believed him and he got this, he could have been Steve McQueen.
Yeah, he would have been Steve McQueen.
When the young girl says that to him in the scene and it touches him and he gets teary-eyed and he's like, fucking Rick Dalton.
Yeah,
he says that going through. That's such a beautiful moment. And that's what makes him interesting is that he is talented. He does have the potential. He is self-destructive. In the book, he's bipolar before he understood what it was. But so our list so far is, I mean, this is one of my favorite lists that we've done. And Sharon, thank you for being a part of this. Sunset Boulevard, Tropic Thunder, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Postcards from the Edge, and Boogie Nights.
I'm there.
Listen, Sharon, this was such a good time, and we are so sorry about, you know, last time, but this was even better, and I'm so thankful we got to do this. And this has been one of my favorite top fives, and I think people are really going to enjoy it, and hopefully go back and watch some of the movies we talked about. But thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us.
Yeah,
always
thank you.
Great to see you, and hopefully we can dream up some more stuff together.
Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe you should convince Todd to come do the show so Wes can slobber his great gratitude all over him.
I think Todd.
Well, I text Todd as we were talking and told him to show up like he did last time.
Yeah,
and
he's on the Peloton right now. You're not going to break him free of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, get her.
All right. But anyway, thank you for having me. I'm not going to hang up now. I'm going to wait until you've downloaded it. And then...
That awesome.
Thank
don't
you.
Don't hang up because we'll talk a little bit.
Don't hang up. Look who's here. It's Jack Kessler.
Hello.
New fan.
Hold on. Hey, Jack.
Yeah, I am a new fan. Hello. Sorry if I'm interrupting.
Yeah,
I was listening from the other room.
No. Jack?
Yes.
I can't see you, man, but I hear your voice, and your mom's always talked about you. She loves you to death, so we love you to death.
She loves you guys to death. I was going to say, I had a break after midterms, and I started watching like literally 2 weeks ago. I'm on season 5 now.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah.
Season 5, baby.
It's super cool. I'm always late to stuff that my parents work on.
Did I not open by saying that? That he doesn't. It's not safe for him to watch it while I'm currently working on something. It has to be like in the rearview mirror before people.
So, Jack, your mom's been doing this for almost 10 years now, and you're just now getting to it?
Yeah, I was busy. Midterms never ends, you know? But
yeah, that's true. You had midterms for 10 years?
I live a rough life, you know?
I hear you.
But
are you, is it good to be home? Are you home for Thanksgiving?
Yeah. It's very nice to be home. And now I can bother her about I was asking her, I was like, why is there Mandarin on the Mars, like logo and stuff? And just all these.
Why is it, Ty? Answer that question.
It's
Jack.
Because not just English-speaking people went into space.
No, of course. But the oil families and the Chinese.
Texas oil and the Chinese and all of that.
But I have to go back to work. But I wanted to say I'm a huge fan. I think it's such a cool show.
Jack, I'm thrilled you're watching, man. Listen, when you catch up, when you get to season 6, you got to call us and tell us what you think of everything.
Absolutely. I hope it's the ending that you were talking about.
I'm not going to say
satisfying.
Yes, it's.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know anything. So
okay.
You can go with your mom on the go watch the on the color correction and all those things. Even though I think it's probably all done now.
Dude, it's done, man. That's locked. He's going to watch it.
Yep.
Pretty and finished.
It's locked, guys. Season 6, baby, coming hot.
Coming in
December,
hot. Soaking wet.
What?
Soaking wet. We just finished. Yeah.
Soaking wet. Coming. Ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Jack, it's so nice to meet you. I mean, we've been working with Sharon for almost a decade now, and we haven't even get to.
We've been working.
Yeah.
She started sending me pictures from like season 1 of all you guys hanging out together on set. Very nice to meet you.
All right, you want to wrap us up, Wes, so that we can get Sharon.
Have fun.
Uploading?
Have fun with Jack with Dostoevsky.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you, buddy. Anyway, this was a very special Thanksgiving edition of Tying That Guy with our dear friend, and we are so lucky to have her in our lives, Sharon Hall. And please do all the things, like and subscribe. This was a great time. Sharon, would you like to say something before we go?
No, I mean, in the season of gratitude, I have nothing but gratitude to the two of you and everybody in the Expanse family. So happy and safe holidays.
Thank you. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.